Welcome to Project Lakota Sichis. We're learning today Sicha Beis of Parshas Shemos. A new Chelek here, Chelek Yud Aleph, page 8. Ala Posik Shlachno B'yad Tishlach. When Moshe Rabbeinu was asked by the Eibishter to go and take the Yidden out of Mitzrayim, so Moshe Rabbeinu tells the Eibishter, send someone else, the one that you're in the future going to send for this. Isa b'medrash, so the Medrash explains, Oma Moshe lefanov. Moshe tells the Eibishter, Rabbi Shalom, Shlach no b'yad tishlach, b'yad Mashiach shehu asad legales. Send Mashiach to go and redeem the Yidden, the one that in the future is going to be revealed to take Yidden out of Galus. This was Moshe Rabbeinu's request. Omnam bakashos ezu shel Moshe lo niskablo. This request of Moshe was not accepted. Hashem's will was that it should be specifically Moshe Rabbeinu to take the Yidden out of Mitzrayim. Divrei HaMedrash move on, so from what it says here in the Medrash it's understood. There's a connection between these two personalities, Moshe and Mashiach. Ashem Mishum Zeh Bikish Moshe, so therefore Moshe requests Sha'ashlichis B'gulasan Shal Bnei Yisrael Mitzrayim, the shlichus of taking Yidden out of Mitzrayim, Shehutla Olav Timase B'yad Mashiach, that's placed upon him, should be given to Mashiach, which is similar to him. These two people, Moshe and Mashiach, are similar, so therefore Moshe Rabbeinu says that the shlichus could be given to Mashiach. Elosh Mikol Makayim, however, the Geula of Mitzias Mitzrayim has to happen specifically through Moshe. And Mashiach is going to be the one to specifically redeem Yidden from the last Galus. So this is something that the Rabbi is going to explain here in the Sicha Barichis, the connection between Moshe and Mashiach, and on the other hand, the fact that there is a difference between them. That Moshe is the Goyal Rishon from Mitzrayim, and Mashiach is the Goyal Achrein from the last Galus. This connection between Moshe and Mashiach. It's because there's a connection between them themselves, that they're similar, so therefore they have an equal mission. Ligal as Bnei Yisrael Migalusam, to redeem Yidden from Galus. Moving up in Maimer Azal, this is also understood from what it says in the Medrash, Moshe hu Goyal Rishon hu Goyal Achrein. Moshe is the Redeemer, the first Redeemer from Mitzrayim, and he is also going to be the last Redeemer to redeem Yidden from Galus. So what's the pshat in this Medrash? V'hine eina pirish she Moshe gufay uba'atzma yiyeh ha-Goyal Achrein. That Moshe Rabbeinu himself is going to be the Goyal Achrein. Sharei Moshe m'shevet Levi. Moshe comes from Shevet Levi. Mashiach Yamed Beis David. Mashiach is a descendant from Beis David. Mishevet Yehuda, from a completely different Shevet. Ela rather Apirish Shemoshe Shehu Goyal Risha in Moshe, which is the first Redeemer. Hu Shebekaychay Va'al Yada Yavi Mashiach Hu Goyal Achrein. It's with the power of Moshe Rabbeinu that will bring about the second Goyal, or the last Goyal, which is Mashiach, to redeem Yidden from the current Galus. So we see here again the connection. And more than this, we can see that from the redemption that Moshe Rabbeinu brings by Mitzrayim, it's from him that the power comes to Mashiach to redeem Yidden, to be the Goyal Achrein. Va'abir, so the simple explanation of the connection between them is Hatayre Hireishis Ve'ikke Malase Shel Melech HaMashiach. The main Milo, one of the main things that it says describing Mashiach himself, is the fact that he's studying Torah. Haige ba Torah, he studies Torah. V'haine shekayche zeh His power to be the Redeemer of Yidden, he gets from Torah. And Torah is described as Torah's Moshe, the Torah of Moshe Rabbeinu. So he's getting the Koyach to be the Goyal Achrein from Moshe Rabbeinu, the Torah of Moshe Rabbeinu, the Goyal Rishon. Same is true regarding Yidden in general. The power that Yidden have to bring down the upcoming Geula through their Aveda, who Ayideh Teira is through Teira, K'meshis Barla Kamon, as will be explained over here in this Sikha. V'shayches Pnimizu, this connection, Shebei Moshe and Mashiach, Murumezes Gam Bezeh, is also hinted in another place. Shebias Mashiach Nikras Yovei Shiloi. The coming of Mashiach is called in the Pasuk as Yovei Shiloi, Shiloi will come. In last week's parasha, Sheyovei Shiloi, Begematria Mashiach. The Balaturim says the two words Yahweh Shiloi is the same gematria as Mashiach. Now the Shiloi, the word Shiloi itself, begematria Moshe. It says in the Zohar the word Shiloi itself is the same gematria as Moshe. So what's the significance of this? So the Rebbe explains. Ki Yahweh Shiloi, the arrival of Shiloi, Hainu Giluya Shel Mashiach Ubiyasi B'Poyel. That refers to the revelation of Mashiach and the fact that he actually arrives. That's begematria Mashiach. V'Shiloi, which is begematria Moshe, what does this mean? Hainu zeh shekvar yeshne kaidem leYavai. The existence of Shiloi even before the Yavai, hakoyach al biyasa shel Mashiach, hu in yoneh shel Moshe. The koyach for what Mashiach uses to be able to come and do the work that he has to do to redeem the Yidden, that originates and comes from Shiloi, from Moshe Rabbeinu, using that koyach from Moshe, Yavai. He'll be able to come and be revealed to redeem Yidden from Golus. So again, we see here the connection between Moshe and Mashiach, and we can see that Moshe Rabbeinu was Dafka the Goel Rishon. He begins the process, he redeems Yidden from Mitzrayim, and he empowers Mashiach to come and complete the job, to bring the final Geula, the Geula Sida. Now it's known, the Sikh of the Friedige Rebbe, Sheyavai Shiloi, the word Yavai, of these two words, Yavai Shiloi, begematria Echad. It's the same gematria as the word Echad. Moshe, b'tziruf Echad, if you combine Moshe together with Echad, begematria Mashiach. That's the gematria of Mashiach. So what does this mean? What's the significance of this gematria? All these gematrios have meaning to them. That means that there's a content here that connects these inyanim. So what is the content of this gematria? Hainu shebiyasa shel Mashiach b'poyel Yavai, the actual arrival of Mashiach, yiyeh al yidei ha'aveda ba'ofen shel Echad. That's when we serve the Eibishter and we reveal the Echad in the world, which the Rebbe will explain here in the Sikha. That's what brings about the Geula. So Yavai, which is Echad, will bring about Shilei, will bring the revelation of Mashiach. V'akoyach levatzeya aveda zu, and the koyach to fulfill this aveda of revealing the Echad in the world, nitten lanu mi Moshe. This is the koyach that's given from Moshe. U'lachein Moshe, which is the nisinis koyach al aveda zu. Moshe, which empowers us for this aveda. B'tzirov Echad, combining the word Moshe with the word Echad, which is ha'aveda atzma, the aveda of what Yidden are doing in the world to bring Mashiach. It's begematria Mashiach. Moshe, the koyach and the aveda itself, this will bring the coming of Mashiach. So over here again we see this inyan, and the Rebbe later in the Sikha will explain the significance of the aveda of Echad. So the explanation here is as follows. So here the Rebbe will begin from the beginning of all times, from the beginning of creation, and go through history and see how the world progresses and what the kavanah over here is, starting from Yetzias Mitzrayim, coming to Matan Torah, what was accomplished by Matan Torah, which is related, of course, to Moshe Rabbeinu, and then how this plays out again when it comes to the Geula Asida through Mashiach. Omru Razal Olam Al Miluay Nivra. The world is created full. What does it mean full? Everything in the world was perfect and complete. The revelation of Elokos was apparent in the world. The purpose of creation was all revealed in the world. The world was on a very high level. But then, through the Chet of Eitz Hadas, the snake came on Chava and brought into her an impurity. And the whole world descended from its level and the perfection that it was on. Until it came Matan Torah. So the world and the Yidden were elevated from this descent. As it says in the Gemara, that by Har Sinai, by Matan Torah, so this impurity that was brought into the world through the snake was removed. Sure, but then what happened after this? Then when the Yidden sinned by Chet Egel, the impurity returned. That impurity still remains somewhat in the world until the upcoming redemption, when the Eibusha will totally remove the impurity of the world. Only then is the impurity completely annulled. The world gets elevated, refined to the ultimate level of perfection, the ultimate level of elevation, and then the world will be in a perfect place again. So the question is, what's really going on over here? The world is created perfect, then there's a descent, then again Matan Torah, then again Chet HaEgel, and then the world comes back, L'asad Lovay, to the Tachlis Abir V'Zichach V'Aliyah. Does that mean that the world at the end, by the coming of Mashiach, returns to the same condition that it was in before everything, where it was Olam HaMilui Nivra? So then what's the gain? What's this process of up and down through all of history, all this time? So V'hine Yedu Atznon Asher Yirid Tzarech Aliyahi. Every descent is for a purpose of an elevation. It's not that we come back to the same place. V'haine shekol tachlisa shel yiridim mimadrega kedemes, coming down and going down from a level that you're on, hilitzarech aliyah ba yada. It's because this yirida itself brings about a aliyah, it brings about an elevation. So hare muvan shoha aliyah shel achrei hayirida. The level that you reach through this yirida, yeshpa aliyah legabe ilish ayakaydem yirida. You're coming to a higher place than you were before. If you're returning to the same place, there's no point to the yirida. The Eibishter only allows a yirida, a descent, to happen because it's going to bring you to a higher place. So muvam mizeh we understand as well regarding everything we spoke about here. Shemadregas ha'aliyah yidei matan Torah, the level that Yidden came to, that were elevated to at the time of Matan Torah, Shabal Achreya Yirida Yidei Chet Tzadas, that they came to after the descent of Chet Tzadas, Yeshba Yisrain Al Dargas Ilui Shakaydum Chet Tzadas. They came to a higher place, a higher level than what they were on before Chet Tzadas, when the world was created Al Milui. And most definitely Shekamoikeinu Be Yisrain Malasa Shal Aliyah Asida. The same is true when it comes to the elevation, to the level that the world will be elevated to. When it comes to the Gula Asida, Shal Achreya Yirida B'Chet HaEgel, following the Yirida of Chet HaEgel, Legabe Ha'aliyah de Matan Torah, Shakaydem Chet HaEgel, comparing to the level that Yidden reached at the time of Matan Torah, the Aliyah that's going to be La'asad Lava will be even greater. Every Yirida brings about an Aliyah to an even greater place. That's the klal of Yirida Tzarech Aliyah. The Eibishter doesn't allow for a creation, for a Yirida to happen without a purpose that this brings to a greater level. So this mila, this advantage, this elevation that we come to, that follows the descent, in contrast to the level that you were on before, he is very powerful. And this is true both as far as the revelation from above to below, that it's a greater level of revelation, and also as far as the condition of the world and the Yidden and the world from below, the level, the way this impacts them is also much greater after a Yirida. And the Rebbe explains both aspects here regarding Matan Torah, and then the Rebbe will explain both aspects regarding the elevation that will happen La'asad Lavet. As we see by the Aliyah that took place at the time of Matan Torah. So first, as far as the revelation from above, even before Matan Torah, the power was given to fulfill mitzvahs. Adam was commanded to fulfill 6 mitzvahs. A 7th was added to Avram, to Noach, that is. Avram got more mitzvahs. Yitzchak, Yaakov, each one of the Avos got another mitzvah. And more generally speaking, Chazal tell us the Ha'avis, Kaimu, Kol HaTeirah Kula Shalei Nitna. They fulfilled all of Torah before it was given. So they had the ability to do mitzvahs even before Matan Torah. But Im Kol Zeh, Haridafke Matan Torah, it's specifically at the time of Matan Torah, Nischadish, Loi Rak Ilui Rav Teisves. Kayach, Bekima Mitzvahs Atzvan, there's a tremendous novelty, there's a greater power, a greater ability to fulfill mitzvahs on a completely different level. Totally higher level. The mitzvahs that were given by Matan Torah, the Taryag mitzvahs, is a completely different thing. So this is a much greater revelation from above that happens at Matan Torah. But there's also another detail. Elegam kol inyan du'uvanu v'charta. The whole idea that the Eibishter chooses Yidden, he chooses them as his nation, the chosen people. B'chiras HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'bnei Yisrael haba matzmusa yisbarach. The idea of b'chira and its purity is when the Eibishter chooses Yidden. It comes from the very essence of the Eibishter, not being influenced by any advantages or disadvantages that Yidden have relative to anyone else. But it's the free choice of the Eibishter himself to choose the body of a Jew to be his. This is the essence of the Eibishter, which is Shalamayla Mikol Oyer V'Gilui Shenizgala Kaidem Matan Torah. It's higher than any other level of light or revelation that was revealed in the world before Matan Torah. So we see that a Matan Torah, as far as the revelation from above, was on a much higher level, incomparably greater to what was before. The essence of the Eibishter is choosing the Yidden to be his chosen people at that time. So the same is also true regarding the Yidden themselves and the world, the way Matan Torah elevated them. Although we see that after Matan Torah and the Yidden sinned, so the impurity of Chet Egel returns. This impurity that returns then is not compared to the impurity that was there through the snake before Matan Torah. Why? The Lefisha bir vali the Paskazo Masam Matan Torah hoya bedargen nailis yaser midargas ilikaydem Chet. Since the elevation that the Yidden came to, when Paskazo Masam, when the impurity was taken away from them at the time of Matan Torah, so they came to a much higher level than the world was on when it was perfectly before Chet Eitzadas. So the effect of Matan Torah was more deeper and penetrated the entity of the Yidden to a greater degree. So therefore they were elevated to a higher place. So even when they did sin and they did experience a descent again, the effect of Matan Torah still remains. The effect of Chet Eitzadas is much stronger. It brought the world down to a much more extreme way than the descent that was caused by Chet Egel, because the elevation and the impact, the pnimius that penetrated the Yidden through Matan Torah was much greater. So therefore, Chet Egel cannot affect them in the same way. So therefore, the effect of Matan Torah is still recognized. So we see over here at Matan Torah the accomplishment of Matan Torah, both as far as the level of revelation that's revealed from above. It's the essence of the Eibishter that comes down to choose the Yidden, and also as far as the level of elevation that the Yidden and the world experiences, that by Matan Torah the world is elevated to a higher place than it was in when the world is created. Similar is also true. When we talk about the level that the world will be elevated to when Mashiach comes, which also follows the Yerida of Chet Egel, so now this Yerida must follow with a greater level of an Aliyah. Shaz Yelamed Mashiach Teiras Kol Bnei Yisrael Kulam. Mashiach himself will teach Teira to all of Yidden. Teirasei Shel Mashiach, the Teira of Mashiach. Bedugmas Aliyah Sheb Matan Teira. Similar to Matan Teira, when the Eibishter gives Yidden the Teira and this elevates the whole world to a higher place, it will happen again when Mashiach comes. Shegamba Maile Gedoyle V'Yiseira Al Aliyah Sheb Matan Teira. So here as well, there's a tremendous advantage that this has, more than the elevation at the time of Matan Teira. In both aspects that we spoke about before, as far as the level that's being revealed from above, and as far as the level of Yidden themselves that are being elevated to, it's also much higher at the time of the Gula Asidah. So we could see this based on what the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya Perek Lamed Vav. So the Alter Rebbe there says, the greatness of the revelation that took place at Matan Torah is, it was to an extent that he literally saw revelation of godliness. Nevertheless, the Alter Rebbe says this is only somewhat and similar to the ultimate revelation that takes place only when Mashiach comes. So how they move on, so we understand from this, the level of the glory of the Eibishter that's revealed. The level that's revealed at the time of Lasad Lavai is greater than the level revealed at the time of Matan Torah. So this is as far as the revelation from above, that there's a greater level of revelation that takes place. This is also true as far as the level of the Yidden themselves and the world that gets elevated. Only then will be fulfilled what the pasuk says, the impurity will be totally removed. Death will be swallowed up eternally. What does this mean? Not like it happened at the time of Matan Torah. So then the impurity was stopped. There was an interruption to it. But vadayin nishra of shari the possibility of this impurity to return was there, like it actually happened. So the very fact that it returned later means that it was never fully removed. The refinement that was accomplished in the world at Matan Torah, it's not the very entity of the world itself that was transformed. There's a revelation from above that overwhelms the world and was mevatel the world. That's what happened at Matan Torah. But as soon as they blew the shofar after Matan Torah, when this revelation of Matan Torah is removed, there's the possibility for the impurity to return. That's what happened at Matan Torah. So yes, the world was elevated to a much higher level than it was in the beginning of creation. However, it wasn't complete. So then what's going to be? The impurity will be totally removed of the world. The very entity of the world itself, for what it is, the nature of the world itself, will be refined and purified. So the revelation will penetrate the world. This will become what the world itself is. So that's eternal, that never changes. It fully penetrates the Metzius of the world, so the world will be elevated to a much higher level than it was on before. So we can see how both by Matan Torah and Lasad Lavai, the Yerida is Seirach Aliyah. Every Yerida brings a greater level of an elevation. And it must be this way. If it doesn't bring you to a higher level, there's no point to the Yerida. It has to be that the Yerida is a catalyst to bring you to a higher level. So now that Rabbi explains this on a deeper level, the fact that it's only after following the Yerida that you come to a higher level, move on, it's understood, the Yerida is not only a preparation, a necessary step to come to the Aliyah that follows afterwards, but rather let's move on again. Move on, it's understood. This Yerida is a necessary step in order to be able to come to the Aliyah that follows. What is the Rebbe saying here? It's the Avodah that's being done in that place of the Yerida that generates and brings about this Aliyah. In other words, the Chiddush over here is, it's not only that we have this rule of Yerida Tzairach Aliyah, because otherwise there's no reason for the Yerida. So following a Yerida is going to becoming a great Aliyah, but the Yerida itself is this necessary step. The Avodah that's being done in this condition of a Yerida is the cause and is the kind of Avodah that brings about this elevation that follows. It's the Yerida that causes this Aliyah. That's just like we see this regarding the Aliyah de Matan Torah. The Maisav is the Aliyah follows and is caused by the preparation that the Ovis did. The fact that Eden were Mitzrayim is described in the Pasuk not just as a place where they were suffering and then they left that and following that they come to Matan Torah, but Mitzrayim itself is a cleansing process, like an iron furnace that is cleansing and bringing the Yidden to come. The Yerida itself is the Avodah that brings you to the Aliyah of Matan Torah. Shehem, Shehichinu, as Bnei Yisrael v'Olam, this is what prepares Yidden and the world, Sheyuchlu lekabel agili de Matan Torah, to be able to receive this revelation of Matan Torah. So just like we see this regarding Matan Torah, that the Yerida itself is the cause, that Avodah there in the Yerida brings the Aliyah, so kach, the same is also true, al yidei ha'achone, shomaseinu v'avedeseinu kozman meshech ha'golus. The Avodah that we do now, here in the time of Golus, v'birur v'zichach ha'olam, to refine and elevate the world. And what's the objective? The entity of the world itself. From its nature, what the world itself is. To refine it and to reveal the world itself. Kanal has said before. Tavai, this brings Ha'aliyah de Gulasida. When Yidden served Eibishter in Gulas and reveal the true entity of what the world itself is, this elevates the world itself, and that is the Yerida itself is the cause and brings about the Gilui and the elevation of the Gulasida. So the Rabbi here will explain now in more detail what this Avodah consists of, the Avodah of penetrating and affecting and refining and transforming the world itself. This will be understood. There's the famous question that's asked, Al Masha Kosov, Shema Yisrael, V'goyma Havaya Echad. So the Pasuk says, Echad. The L'chayra Hayamasim Yisrael Loima Havaya Yochid. It would be more appropriate to say that the Eibishter is Yochid. Yochid means the very only one. Ki milas echad eina meira l'chayra ala mitis yichudah shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The term echad does not really express the real unity of the oneness of the Eibishter himself. Shahare yesh echad amoni. The term echad could be used even when you're counting other numbers following it. Sheyesh sheni loy. There's a number 2 that follows. U'lechein nema yesh echad ve'ein sheni. Sometimes the term echad is used when there isn't a second that follows. And that's what it means here when it says echad. Ki milas echad levada. But what does this mean? That the word echad alone, adayin eina shelel sheni. It doesn't fully negate the possibility for there being a second. Here there's no second. But the word one, written as echad, does mean that there could be a second that follows. Mashen ke milas yachid shelelas meikara yishal sheni. The word Yachid totally negates any possibility for any second to come and follow. So if so, the term that should be used here in Shema Yisrael is Havaya Lekemna Havaya Yachid, the very only one. So the answer that's given in Chassidus for this is the Hi Hanisenes. This itself is the whole entire point. Tachlis va'amitis achdus shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the ultimate and true unity of the Eibishter, is not recognized when you're talking about the Eibishter's existence, which negates any other existence from the beginning. The Eibishter's reality, where he negates everything else. That's not where the ultimate unity of the Eibishter is expressed. Rather, there is an entity of a world. And yet, in this world, nirgash be'olam, what's sensed within this entity of the world that's outside, so to speak, of the Eibishter's reality, she'enoi mitzias la'atzmai, that is not an entity for himself, but this is also included and part of the unity of the Eibishter. This is the expression of the true unity of the Eibishter, that even in a place that's outside, so to speak, of the Eibishter, even there, the Eibishter's unity penetrates this reality as well, that it's also part of the Achdus of the Eibishter. So this is why we say Echad. The word Echad relates to an existence. Echad could be used when you count something else. It's relating to something else. See, even here where you see the existence of the world, we call Makim, yet even here in this reality, from this perspective, even this as well is also completely and totally unified with the Eibishter itself. So when we say the word Echad, we're not minimizing the intensity of the unity. It's the same unity of Yachid, however, even here in a place where there's a Metzias of the world. We're saying Echad, the intensity of the unity of Yachid in the Metzias of Echad where there is a Welt. This is hinted in the 3 letters of the word Echad itself. Dalid is Dalid Ruchas Ha'ilam, the 4 directions in the world. Ches is Zayin, Rekiyim, V'aretz, the 7 heavens and the earth below. Mailo, Mata, above and below. So all of this, which makes up the space and the existence of the world, then you have the Aleph, which is the first letter, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, referring to the Eibishter, Alufay Shalaylam, the master of the world. Va'apirish, b'milas echadu, the meaning of the word echad is, shetzrichim lahamshech olagalas alakusi yizbarach, that we have to draw down and reveal godliness. Hanirmas ba'is aleph, which is hinted in the aleph, the master of the world. Be'olam, in the world. Hanirmas ba'isi is ches v'dalad, which are hinted in the other 2 letters of ches and dalad. Shegam be'olam, even within the entity of the world. Lashon helen v'hester. Olam is a place where there's concealment. Kefi shehu b'mitziyusai, as the world exists within its perception of reality. Ubigdarav hu, and within its confinements. Yurgash, it should sense, shekol mitziyusai, what is this world really? Hu aluf shalaylam. It's unified with the master of the universe. That's a much greater achdus to introduce, to bring the achdus of the Eibishter even into the perception of the Messias of the Welt itself. Also hinted by the fact that the Aleph, which hints to the Eibishter, which is in the beginning of this word, Hi Harishayna, the Klulim Ba B'Telem Eleh. It's the opening and the beginning of the word where the rest of the word is included in this. HaChes v'Hadalad Arimezes HaMetzias Leilam, the Ches and Dalad hinting to the entity of the word itself, of the world itself, is part of the same word which begins with the Aleph, meaning that the entire existence of the world, consisting of the Ches and the Dalad, is all part of that Aleph, which is Aluf Fishel Leilam. It's all totally bottled to the Eibishter. So this is the Avodah of Echad, not Yochid, but a greater Achdus Hashem, revealing the unity of the Eibishter within the Metzias of the world. Ach l'chayra, however, this world, which is as its name indicates, to conceal over godliness, keli, how could it be a keli, how could it be a vessel to receive l'kabel abayv'shi is galay des aluf shalaylam, that the world itself should reveal godliness? How is this? What's the method to have this happen? So hine lezen nitnu teira mitzvahs li Yisrael, therefore the Eibishter gives yidden teira and mitzvahs, b'matan teira. It's through fulfilling mitzvahs. It's learning Torah and doing mitzvahs in the world that elevates the world and changes the world and makes the world itself into a vessel, into a keli to receive the Gilui Elokus in it. So the fact that at Matan Torah the Eibishter empowers us to refine and elevate and change the world itself. It's not only the fact that the Eibishter gives us Torah and mitzvahs, and through fulfilling Torah and mitzvahs, we make the world into a dwelling for the Eibishter, but it's also the very revelation of godliness that happened at the time of Matan Torah, and the level of the world, the way it was impacted at that time of Matan Torah, this enables and empowers us that the Torah and mitzvahs that we fulfill later should be able to transform the world itself. What happened at the time of Matan Torah itself? At the time when Torah was given, the world was totally annulled of its existence because of the intense revelation that came. The point is that this revelation of Matan Torah was sensed very strongly by the existence of the world itself. A bird didn't chirp, and all the other animals in the world also stopped in their tracks. The entire world ceased to function. So this shows you how at the time of Matan Torah, the revelation that takes place very strongly impacts the very existence of the world. Now, however, we can see here that at the time of Matan Torah itself, the Teva of the world itself was not yet able to receive and internalize this revelation of Matan Torah. At that time, the world was annulled. The functions of the world ceased to function at the time of Matan Torah because of this intense revelation coming from above. And therefore the revelation of Matan Torah didn't fully penetrate the world itself. And it was only temporary. The Yidden were able to sin afterwards by Chet Egel. But hine bittul zeh b'shas Matan Torah, it's this bittul that takes place at Matan Torah. This empowers the Yidden once the world experiences this shock of revelation that comes from above, that totally is mevatel, the metzias of the world, even though it doesn't penetrate, but it creates the possibility that later Yidden should be able to come and then affect the world and turn it into a keli. That the world itself should become a place that's fit to receive internally, to become a dwelling for the Eibishter. So there's two stages over here. There's Matan Torah, which begins the process. The Matan Torah comes mumayla lamata, to be mevatel the existence of the world, and then that enables the Yidden to transform the world from below to actually make the world itself into a keli. So these two levels over here of Matan Torah, and then the kayach of the Avodah of Yidden to actually transform the world, these two stages is also the difference between Moshe and Mashiach. Now we come back to understand the connection of Moshe and Mashiach, but also the difference between them. Why Moshe is dafke by Yitzias Mitzrayim and Matan Torah, and it's specifically Mashiach that redeems the Yidden lost love. So now we understand Mashem Moshe b'hisafas echad, Moshe Rabbeinu, and you add the word Echad, b'gematria Mashiach. This is the same gematria. In other words, this brings Mashiach. Kinyanish on Moshe, which is Matan Torah. Moshe that represents Matan Torah. Hu nesinis kayach ala aveda bebir v'zichach ha'elam ba'ifin shel echad. Matan Torah, as the Rebbe just explained, brings down this tremendous, powerful revelation that's mevatel the world and enables us now to go ahead and actually elevate and refine the world itself to reveal the echad in the world. Not the yachid, but the echad in the metzias of the world itself. Va'aveda zu b'kayach shel Moshe. And it's this aveda that Yidden do, being empowered by Matan Torah through Moshe Rabbeinu. This brings the revelation of Mashiach when the world will be fully transformed. So we can see the connection that there is between Moshe and Mashiach. The actual Gula Sida is coming through Mashiach himself. However, who begins the process? It's Moshe Rabbeinu. It's the kayach of Moshe for Matan Torah. Shemimenu val yodoi nitna yecheles lekarv lahavi gilu Mashiach. It's through Moshe Rabbeinu bringing the Torah down by Matan Torah, bringing this tremendous bittul into the world that Yidden afterwards are able to fulfill Torah mitzvahs and begin the process of transforming Mashiach until Mashiach himself comes and completes this and brings the full transformation. But miyidach, at the same time, we now understand the difference between the two levels of Moshe and Mashiach. Moshe is the redeemer of Yidden. But the purpose of Yidden being in Mitzrayim, and they were redeemed from Mitzrayim, is all to come to Matan Torah. Coming out of Mitzrayim is all for coming to serve Hashem at this mountain at Matan Torah. What is Matan Torah, which is what Moshe Rabbeinu is all about? In addition to what we mentioned before, that Matan Torah, the Eibusha chooses Yidden as his nation. It's empowering Yidden, it's bringing this tremendous revelation and bittul into the world to empower Yidden to do their Aveda. But that's only the koyach, that's the beginning of the process. That's Moshe. But in Yoni Shal Mashiach, Hu Gemar, Habir, Va'azichach, Va'ikar, Aveda, La'achreze, Mashiach represents the completion and the full refinement and transformation of the world that follows later, Kasher Ha'olam, Kvar, Yizbar, V'yizdachach, V'cholo, when the world will be fully refined. So this is what Moshe Rabbeinu was requesting from Hashem. Let Mashiach come and redeem the Yidden. Let the process happen. Let Mashiach come right away and do the whole thing. And the Eibusha tells him, no, there's a two-stage process over here. First, there's going to be Yetzias Mitzrayim and Matan Torah, which brings the Gilui Mulmayla and elevates the world to a very high level, but yet it's only a revelation and a bittul from above. It doesn't fully penetrate the world. It's a process. And then only later, through the Aveda of Yidden, Torah Mitzvahs, throughout all the generations, this will fully penetrate and transform the world itself, and only then can Mashiach come and be the final Redeemer of Yidden. Now that Rebbe brings this to the specific Aveda of every person in his life. Ha'adam hu eilam katan. Every person is a small world. Everything we described here regarding from the beginning of history until Mashiach comes is true in the Aveda of a person himself. Could it be applied to every individual every day? A person goes out to work until evening. And then before he goes to sleep at night, he says, I return to you, Hashem, my neshama. The next day he wakes up fresh as a new creation. And he begins his new Aveda every day. So if we look at the person's Aveda, we could see these two stages, the Matan Torah of the day, which is being mevatel the world, the revelation, but then also going into the world and transforming and elevating the world itself. Aveda sayoy maschila betfila v'teira. A person's Aveda begins with davening and learning. Lebeis HaKnesses, Beis HaKnesses lebeis HaMedrash. First you go to Beis HaKnesses to daven, and then from there to Beis HaMedrash to learn Torah, as the Gemara says. Va'oz gam mekabel hakoyach lavedosi ba'elam. From there, from the Matan Torah of your day, you receive the koyach to serve the Eibishter within the world itself. Nefesh alekis mispashetes begufay. The Nefesh Elokis extends and spreads into all of the body of the person al yidei tefillah. That's accomplished in davening. And then v'yachal limshul b'yitzahara b'chalkei ba'olam, giving the person the power to control and to have dominion over his yitzahara and his portion in the world. Al yidei Torah, which also includes learning Torah, which is tavlin l'yitzahara. Torah is the spice to be able to deal with the temptations of the Yetzer Hara. And in a simple sense, Torah gives a person guidance in everything he does in his life. That's the first part of the day. That's the Matan Torah of the day. Then comes the actual Aveda in the world. When a person goes out into the ways of the world to work and so on. Here the person is entering into the world. He's not stepping away from his Aveda. He's not dropping his davening and learning and then going into the world. Here he's extending and bringing down all of this to elevate the world itself, to continue and to complete his Aveda by bringing it into the world. We could see this hinted in the way that Rambam describes a Chacham. A wise man, it should be recognized that he's wise, the way he drinks and the way he eats. Meaning, in everything a person does, even mundane activity, that he is that Chacham, which the Mishnah calls a Chacham to bring his inspiration of davening and learning, that it should also influence the way he eats and drinks and everything else he does in the world. And a person can come and save a city, to save his little city, to elevate his body and his whole life through the wisdom, through the Torah that he has. Hachad, going back to the point that we said before regarding the Echad, so the Ches and the Dalet, Batal Aleph, to take the Ches and the Dalet, which represents the directions and the above and below, all the directions of the world, to elevate all of this to become Batal to the Aleph, Alufei Shaleilam, the master of the universe, Al Yidei Aleph Chachachma, through bringing the learning of Torah, the influence of Torah into the Metzius of the world when a person goes to work. And when a person completes his Aveda in the day, a person takes an account, an honest account of what he has accomplished in this day. Again, you see very clearly emphasized what is the mission of the person, which is to bring the Aleph, the master of the universe, into the world itself. And we can see this in what we say, I give over my neshama to you, Hashem, and the very last word that we say before we go to sleep at night is emes. The Eibusher is the God of truth. Why do we mention the word emes? And that's the word we go to sleep with. The word emes represents similar to what echad represents, bringing the Eibusher into the world itself. The truth of the Eibusher brought into the world. The Yerushalmi describes what the word emes is. The Eibusher's seal is truth. These three letters of Aleph, Mem, and Saf. The Aleph is the first of the Aleph base. The Mem is the middle letter. And the Saf and the Saf is the last of the letters. What this means is, Ani Rishain, V'ani Achrain, the Eibusher is the beginning, the highest of all levels, Achrain, and it comes down here, and the revelation of the Eibusher penetrates into the lowest levels, and all the levels in between, it's all godliness. Meaning, what does the emes represent? The Aleph, Mem, and Saf that it penetrates all levels. Shebachal in Yoni Olam, in all matters of the world. Minakotza from one extreme to the other. Yumshach v'yizgale emes havaya. That the truth of the Eibusher, which goes through and penetrates everything, is revealed. Alufei shel Olam, the master of the universe. It's the Eibusher, the true existence, which is the source of all of creation. The language that the Rambam uses in the beginning of his Sefer when he describes the fact that the Eibusher creates the worlds. So really, ultimately, we're revealing the ultimate truth, the emes. Emes is not the truth in a reality which is removed from another world, from our reality here below. Real truth is when it penetrates all levels and it comes down and it extends in every reality without a difference. And therefore it says in Sfarim, the Marsha says this, Shebahaser ha'alef mimilas emes, if you remove the aleph of the word emes, nishar meis, you're left with the word meis, death. The opposite of life. The true life. How do we reveal the true life of the Eibusher? When we could bring down a revelation that penetrates all levels, that's emes. If it doesn't penetrate all levels, so then essentially it's meis. It's not, there's no life there. Just as this is true in general. At the time of Matan Torah, the Eibishter empowers us to refine and elevate the world itself. Same is true regarding every person's individual Aveda. By refining and elevating your portion in the world, by fulfilling all of this, as it's commanded in Torah, which is Moshe, again the Kayach coming from Moshe Rabbeinu, we will come to the general redemption of all Yidden in the entire world, Bechinas Mashiach, the revelation of Mashiach, Ba'Gala Didan in our times.